All right. I'm Joe Lahutsky. It's December 18th, 2020.
Hello, I'm Riley Johnson, and today we'll be interviewing my grandmother, Barbara Johnson, about her life. Grandma, do you want to just start from like your life in Alabama, and then if you remember any part of that?
Hello, my name is Barbara Ann Johnson, and I was born uh, 81 years ago in 1939, November 28th, and I was born in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I was the fifth of seven children. I have uh, four sisters and two brothers. All are deceased except for two of us. Uh, when I was a year old, my parents, James and Osceola Frierson, moved to Ypsilanti, Michigan from Alabama. He was seeking a better life. He went to Ypsilanti, Michigan. He got a job working for a judge that lived in the city who owned a lot of property, and my father was the manager of his properties. Um, I remember after he bought some land, and it was right across the street from an apple orchard, a big apple orchard, and my father built our home there, and that's where I grew up on Harriet Street in Ypsilanti, Michigan. When I first started school in kindergarten, the name of the school was Harriet Street School. It was down the street about a block and a half from my house. That's where I went to school from kindergarten through sixth grade. After leaving sixth grade, I went to the middle school, which was housed in Ypsilanti House High School, but the seventh and eighth graders were contained in one room. After completing the eighth grade, I went on to the high school in the same building, which was changing classes. I graduated in 1957. Upon graduation, I went to a college in Wilberforce, Ohio, called Central State University. I majored in elementary education. I enjoyed my 4 years there. I was there for 4 years. I was an out of state student, uh, stayed on campus, did my student teaching in laboratory school on campus. Upon in my senior year in March, they had someone to come from Milwaukee Public Schools to interview uh, prospective teachers for jobs in Milwaukee. And I got one of the jobs. They hired 13 of us from the school out of my class to come to Milwaukee to teach. I came to Milwaukee in 1961, August of 1961, and started.
Grandma,
Yes,
could I stop you real quick so we could go back like just to like some details of like your life as a child? Like, did you have any hobbies growing up?
I was a Girl Scout, so that helped me do a lot of things. Uh, the doctor's wife in our community was the Girl Scout leader, and she helped us do a lot of things. I used to go to Girl Scout camp during the summertime. They had a community center on Harriet Street. Everything was on that south side on Harriet Street. And we would go to the community center. In the summertime, they would have activities for the children to do, and we would do the activities. When I turned 16, when I was in high school, the counselor got us jobs at the University of Michigan Hospital over in Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor was 9 miles from Ypsilanti. And we worked after school 3 hours uh, setting up the trays and feeding the patients. We'd work from 3:30 to 7. I had 1 day a week off, and the days would rotate. And I did that. I even did that the summer before I came to Milwaukee to start teaching. Um, my upgrowing was a nice upgrowing. I lost my parents when I was young. They both passed away in 1947, 3 months and 18 days apart. And my aunt and uncle moved from Detroit, Michigan, out to Ypsilanti, and they took over us in our household because my father had the house and everything already built. But when I came to Milwaukee, uh, I taught. My first assignment was at William McKinley Elementary School. It was located on 20th and McKinley. And I taught there until they closed that district out. And after they closed that district out, I was moved to Green Bay Avenue. I had met and married uh, my husband, which is Riley's grandfather. And I had 2 children by the time um, I had been in the system about 10 years, and I had 2 children. But after I had my children, I went on and climbed the ladder in MPS. And after I had my last child, they placed me at O.W. Holmes School, which was located on the east side of Milwaukee. And I stayed at that school for 20 years. And after 20 years, I was called into administration. And I went to La Follette Elementary School as the assistant principal. And I stayed there 5 years. And then I decided to retire. So I retired. After I retired, my church had a school. And I had not been retired for 3 months. And they needed a principal. So the board at the school contacted me and asked me would I come down and be the principal of the school. And I did that, and I stayed down there 9 years, 9 more years. And then after 9 years, I had gotten tired again, so I told them I was going to retire again. And that was the end of my career. I did do some other things after leaving there because once you get started working, you get so used to working, you just want to work, work, work. And I went back and I worked at MPS for a while, doing some reading things with teachers. And even last year, I did some work over at Holy Redeemer school at Mother Daniels, on Mother Daniels Way. I went in and was helping to supervise and coach teachers over there. After that, I have not done anything in the field of education, but I immensely enjoyed my field that I chose to go into, which was elementary education.
Grandma,
Yes.
so was there like a teacher that you had in school, like growing up, that made you want to be a teacher?
Well, my sister that sent me to college was a teacher. When I finished high school, she was already teaching in the same system that I finished high school in. She was in the elementary school, and I used to see her perform, doing teaching and doing her work at home, and that's what made me want to go into teaching. And I'm very happy that I did.
Mrs. Johnson, did you know anyone when you came to Milwaukee, or were you just kind of in the blue?
I knew one person that had gone to college with me and had graduated with me. She came and she taught in Milwaukee for 1 year. Then she got married and she went to where her husband was. But her family lived here. So those were the only people that we knew when we came here, except for the ones that came here with me. The 13 people that came here with me to teach, I knew them.
All
And
right.
we
So,
would meet often. We would meet together often.
Grandma.
Yes.
So like when you came to Milwaukee, or when you realized that you were going to come to Milwaukee to teach, like what was going through your mind? Like, were you optimistic to see the city, or?
Well, I had never been no further than Chicago. So I didn't know what Milwaukee was going to be like. And when I came here, when I sent my contract back, which was a little card that they would send you, I had forgot to sign the card. So they told me to come to the school board when I got to town because I had to sign the contract. Okay, my uncle drove me here. He and his wife drove me here from Michigan. We stopped in Chicago and got one of her daughters who knew a little bit about Milwaukee. And we came over here and we found the school board. At that time, the school board was still down on down near where the Pabst Brewery Company was, down on Belit and 6th or 7th Street. But then when I went in there, they told me they were moving, and most of the offices had moved down on 52nd and Belit, and they told me how to get to 52nd and Belit, and that's when I went down there and I went in the new building and signed the contract, and then they gave us a list of people who we could live with, and my friend Irene Henry was coming here too to teach, and she lived in Washington D.C. So I told her I when I come here, I'd find a place for us to stay. And I went to this. I took the address because the city was kind of easy for me to manipulate because of the streets. They just run the same way, and we were able to find where they had given us this address of this lady, and we stayed uh, with this lady named Mrs. Banks. She was a beautician. She lived on 15th and Center, and she rented us a room. And on our first payday, we were getting off the bus and we were walking to her house, and we saw a sign that says apartment for rent. And I told Miss Henry, I said, I'm going to see about that because I said I'd like to have an apartment instead of just being in one room. And we went and found the apartment, uh, uh, and it was a third floor apartment. And the people who lived on the second floor, uh, the woman was a teacher, and her aunt and uncle lived on the first floor with their children, and they owned the house. So that was a nice uh, living arrangement, and I stayed there until I married.
How did you meet your husband? Like, where did you meet him?
There was a restaurant on 9th and Center, and it was called Thelma's Back Door, and they had good food in there, and we would go there and eat our dinner because we didn't have, when we first got here, we didn't have a place to cook or anything because we didn't have an apartment. And so we would go there and buy our dinner. We'd ride the bus down there. We learned how to ride the buses. We'd ride the bus down there and we'd go in there and eat. And after we would eat, we would take the bus and come down to 15th and Center and get off and walk home. Well, uh, I wanted me a soda with my dinner one day, and the lady that was serving us said, "You'll have to go over to the bar and get the soda." And I went over there, and this older gentleman and younger man, they were there handling the bar, and I told them I wanted two sodas, one for myself and one for Mrs. Henry. And so they gave me the sodas, and I heard one of the older gentlemen say, that's a nice looking lady there, to the young fella. And that's how it started. That's how it started.
Uh, so, I mean, you met my grandpa, and like after uh, you said you're a nice looking lady, like where did it go from there? Like, did you get his phone number or something? Or
He
is it
came
just
and got
Telegram?
mine. He
Oh,
came and got my phone number.
and how long like had Grandpa been living in Milwaukee before you met him?
He came here when he was 13 years old, and so he had already graduated from high school. And he had been in the service and was out of the service. Yeah, he had been in the service, was out of the service. Your grandpa didn't go back to college till after he and I got married.
Um, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to ask, like, what was your experience like teaching, like at your first job? Were you nervous because like it was your first time?
Well, what it is, Joe, when you come into a new system and you know nothing about the system, you're trying to learn the system, and that makes you nervous. You try not to make mistakes because the people who are more experienced than you will catch your mistakes. The principal might catch your mistakes, and at that time, the principals used to be in and out of the rooms all the time, in and out of the rooms all the time. And I always had good principals. I never had a principal that I couldn't get along with because I thought that was key. You have to get along with your leader. And that was one of my priorities. Make sure you get along with your leader. But I was scared because where I student taught in Ohio was different than what it was here. When I first walked into the room, I saw these chart holders, and I didn't know what the chart holders were for. So I asked the principal. He said, "That's part of teaching your reading." And I said, "Oh, we didn't teach reading like that. We had basils." I said, "Well, could you get the supervisor out here?" I said, "Because I don't know anything about how you do it here." And so he called for the supervisor to come. Supervisor came from central office, and she told me, she said, "You go sit in the corner and get your pen and paper, write down everything I do." And that's what I did. That's how I learned how they did reading here in the system. Because I had first grade. First grade is crucial to reading. And I didn't want to mess up anybody's life. And then they didn't know how to read after coming out of my room. So she did an excellent job of showing me what you do with those chart holders and everything. At that time, they had basils, but you didn't start the kids in basils in the first grade. You started them out on charts. You take a word and you would develop a chart, and that's how they learned how to read.
Question I have was like in your early teaching career at William McKinley School,
Yeah.
what was your favorite memory at that school?
Well, I was the principal. He I'll never forget him. He We used to call him Pops. His name was Mr. Reynolds, and we called him Pops. Uh, when they uh, when they remodeled the school, they sent us to other schools doing the remodeling. And when the remodeling was over, and we came back to the school, I had a room close to the office. I could always see when he was leaving and when he was coming back, because I always kept my door open when I was teaching. I felt closed in if the door was closed. So I kept my door open. And I'll never forget one morning, the first winter here, although I was from Michigan, the winter here was different from the winter in Michigan. And we had to catch the bus. And we would leave home an hour before it was time for us to be at school. We had to be at school at 8:30. We'd leave home at 7:30 because we knew the Vliet Street bus ran slow, and we had to transfer on the Vliet Street bus. One morning we got there and we ran in that building and we were 5 minutes late. When we went in the office to get our keys, he didn't say anything then. But he came to the room, came to each of our individual rooms and told us we were late. And I told him, I said, well, we left home an hour earlier. He said, you'll have to leave a little earlier because that man caused me to go buy a car that night. I knew how to drive. And I went and bought a car. I said, I won't be late no more. You don't have to worry about me being late. And I was never late for school again. I never did believe it, but I never did believe in being late. But the bus made us late. That's one thing I
Grandma,
remember about that school.
what year did you buy your first car, and how much did it cost?
I bought it in 1961. The first winter that I was here, I bought a convertible Ford. It was red, and I think I paid. I might have paid. It was a used car. I think I might have paid $1,000 for it. But then the next year, when the new Fords came out and they had bucket seats, I traded that one in on a new convertible, and I was only paying $125 a month car note on a brand new car. That's all I was paying. It didn't even have 3 miles on it when I drove it off the lot.
Well, so I guess right now in the timeline we're at about 1961, and you got married to Grandpa in 1963, right?
Yes.
So you guys dated for 2 years, a year and a half.
Yes.
What was that like?
It was nice. Your grandpa was very, very, he was a gentleman. He was very nice to me. He was a real gentleman. And he knew a lot of people here in Milwaukee. And that's how I learned a lot of people in Milwaukee. But we had a wedding in Michigan, a church wedding. Him and his friends and all the fellas that was in the wedding, they drove over to Michigan. When I first that's before the wedding, he went home with me to meet my folks, and then he had to take the train to come back because he had to go to work, and he took the train and came back, and then a couple of days before the wedding, they all drove cars and came over there. Came to Michigan. We got married on July the 20th, 1963.
So at that point, were you and him getting ready to like buy a house in Milwaukee?
No, we rented. We rented a house. When we first got married, we rented a house. And the rent was cheap and everything, but I couldn't stay in the house because they said after I moved out of there, they said the first owners of the house, he died in the house, and seemed like I would wake up and see strange things. And at that time, when we were living in the house, your granddad was working at the boys' home, and he was working afternoon shift. And I had to have my sleep to get up and go to that classroom the next morning. So what I would do, I would lock the door. It had a skeleton key. I would lock the bedroom door, and that's how I could go to sleep. And he would come home, have to knock on the door to get in the bedroom when he would come home at night off because he worked afternoon shift out at the boys' home.
And where was that house? Do you remember what street it was on?
It was right. You could see it from Burleigh. I can't think of the name of the street now, but you could see it right from Burleigh. I can't think of the name of the street. After we moved from there, we moved over on 20th Street and rented a upstairs apartment. The people that we rented from, I'm still in contact with them. And we stayed there until we moved over on 11th and Capitol, a nice flat. And after we moved from there, we bought our first home over on 28th and Roosevelt Drive. It was a land and stone duplex, very nice. 2 bedrooms down, 2 bedrooms in the apartment upstairs, a bath, very nice duplex. And after that, we sold it. We were going to build a house, but then we changed our mind about building. So then we stayed in an apartment for a while. Then we bought a house on 62nd and Malvina. Oh, it was a 4-bedroom home, real nice brick home. And we stayed there for 14 years. And then my husband said, well, it's time for us to move on. So that's what we bought a house on 9712 Marcel Avenue. And I just sold that house last May. So we stayed in that house about 21 years before your grandfather passed. And I sold the house last May. And so now I'm living in an apartment.
Joe, did you have a question or something you were going to say?
No, well, the first house you seemed to imply that it was haunted. Did you, like, other than weird things, did you ever see anything or?
Yeah, they said he died at opening the refrigerator door. One day I woke up and saw the refrigerator. Night I woke up and saw the refrigerator door open. So that kind of scared me about that house.
It's very
And
interesting.
I couldn't stay in there. So that's when I started looking for another place, and we found the apartment in the 3300 block of 20th Street.
Grandma.
And that's where I was living when Riley's father was born.
That's what I was going to ask.
I was living on 20th Street.
Grandma.
Yes.
So, you said you were going to build a house, but you decided not to.
Yes.
I remember Grandpa told me a story about wanting to build a house out in Brown Deer. Do you remember that story?
Yeah, out in Brown Deer, and they kind of did us a little wrong on it and everything. So we didn't build it, and I'm glad that we didn't, because when I became an administrator, you had to live in the city. Administrators at MPS had to live in the city, and I wouldn't have been able to live out there.
Grandma, well, the story that Grandpa told me was that the guy who was going to build the house told me that you couldn't have any other children if you moved out there.
What?
I don't know. That's just what Grandpa told me. I think you were pregnant with Aunt Crystal at that point.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want any more children anyway.
Oh yeah.
2 is enough.
All right. Oh, Grandma, what was the house that you moved in? Oh, go ahead, Joe. Actually,
I was just gonna ask, how was your experience, working while being a mother?
It was kind of rough, but Mr. Johnson helped me out a little bit, because he would always make sure that the homework was done and everything. And so that was a great help to me. I didn't have to indulge in that when I came home from working with kids all day long. He made sure that everything was going right.
Grandma.
Yes.
So you were an MPS teacher, but you sent my dad and Crystal to private school.
Did I what?
You sent my dad and Aunt Crystal to private school, right?
Yes. Because
Was there a reason that
I saw what was going on in the public schools, and I wasn't going to subject them to that.
What school did they go to?
They went to they started out in the nursery school at Guardian Angels Nursery School. It was located over on the east side, right across from Lincoln High School. Then they went up on Green Bay, and I think it was called Garden Garden Homes, Guardian Home School. It was a Catholic school. And when Chris came out of 8th grade, the people up the principal and the reading specialist up there told me about Marquette High School. Said, Mrs. Johnson, you need to send him there. He would do well there. And that's why your dad went to Marquette High. And when he went to Marquette High, the tuition was cheap. His last year, I only paid $1,300. But now it's way up there.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you really are thankful that you sent him to Marquette.
What you say? Am I thankful that I sent him? Yes, because he got a good education.
Were
And
there
Chris
any other high
got a good
schools?
one up to Guardian DSHA.
Mm-hmm. Were there any other high schools that you were thinking of sending him to?
No.
You said there was already issues with the public school system. What like issues did you see, and like did you see them immediately, or did they begin to develop?
I saw them over the years as I was in there. And even when I became an administrator, you have to stay on people. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. And you shouldn't have to just keep hammering that, because everybody should know what job they're supposed to do.
So, sorry.
No,
Would you say the teachers weren't doing a very good job?
the teachers, some of them were not. I'm not saying all of them weren't.
Mm-hmm.
Some weren't. And you're going to find that in every vocation. Some people are not going to be doing what they're supposed to be doing.
When do you think that started?
What?
When do you think that started in the MPS system?
Oh, I can't say when it started.
Do you think that the MPS, or when do you think MPS has got the reputation that it has now? Because I don't think it really has a very good reputation, sadly. But
Well, there have been some darn good people who have gone through MPS and have gone on to do well. But every vocation has somebody in it who's not going to make it look good. I'll put it like that. I have seen some very good teachers in MPS. But see, when it's your child, you can't be with them all the time. So you just sacrifice and do what you have to do for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. Well,
Grandma.
a lot of people look at you as if to say, well, it was good enough for you to work in. But when I went to work, I gave 100% every day. But you can't say that all the rest of them are doing that.
Mm-hmm. Grandma.
Yes.
You talked a little bit about being married in being married in the church. Could you talk a little bit about your faith life and what churches you went to in Milwaukee?
Oh, I've always been a member of a Baptist church.
Mm-hmm.
I've been at the church that I go to now. Community Baptist Church for over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy it. I enjoy working in the church. I enjoy working with the people. And it keeps me going.
So, I mean, you didn't know anyone coming to Milwaukee, so how did you find that church?
How did I find the church?
Yeah.
I was at work one day, and this young man asked me, did I go to church? And I told him I hadn't found a church in Milwaukee yet. So he invited me to his church, and I joined that church because I liked it. But then when my husband's godmother wanted to go to church and she couldn't drive herself anymore, she asked me to come and take her. And Crystal and I would go and take her. And I said, well, I can't go to my church and go to hers. So I went and talked to the pastor about it. And he told me go on down there with her. So that's a good pastor down at that church. And so you'll enjoy it. And that's what I did.
Did you think that Milwaukee was like a good place to have a family?
It was a good place to raise a family. Milwaukee was a very quiet town. When I first came here, you could walk the streets at night and nobody would bother you. But you can't do that now. It has changed. It has really changed. Uh, it's just different than what it was years ago.
Do you have any ideas on what you think changed it, or what has affected that?
A lot. Well, see, Milwaukee had a lot of people coming over here getting on the welfare because they paid good welfare. So you had an influx of people coming here just for the money, and it brought a lot of bad stuff to Milwaukee. And then when they broke down on that, giving that welfare money away, then they stopped coming.
Well, I mean, you lived in Milwaukee over 50 years now, and what is one thing that Milwaukee gave you, that you think wouldn't have really happened if you decided to go teach somewhere else or move somewhere else?
I really never thought about that. I spent 38 years in the Milwaukee public school system, and I enjoyed the 38 years that I was in there. But I really never thought about. I had offers to go to other places, Akron, Ohio, and Saginaw, Michigan, but I took the one that paid the most money. Milwaukee paid the most money, and that's the one that I took.
So, I mean, financially, I guess Milwaukee gave you a better option.
It did, because I have very good income coming from retiring as an administrator.
Did you face any issues being a teacher? Did people ever give you hard times? Or
oh, sure, you have that, but you have to know how to deal with it. I used to have parents that come and try to act crazy, but you had to learn how to deal with it. And I have been, I have gone, coming from my room, going to the office to hang up my keys at night, and parents are in there acting crazy with the principal and vice principal. And I'm just the type of person, I would speak up and they would listen. The parents would listen to me. I don't know whether it was the way I spoke up or how I spoke up, but I remember one time I went in there and this man was really giving the principal the dickens. And I just said to him, that's no way to act, sir. I said, it is a way to do things. And he looked at me and he said, you right, ma'am. And he walked out of the office. But you have to learn how to deal, because you're going to run into those parents that are really something to deal with. So you have to learn how to deal with them.
What was it like being, I mean, you talked about being a teacher. What was it like being an administrator at a school in Milwaukee?
Tough.
Mm-hmm.
It was tough, but I was up for it. I did the job, and the school I was at was a rough school, but I did the job.
Mm-hmm. What was your favorite memory as an
I remember the things that I remember about it. The kids remember who you are. If they see you, I can walk down the street now and run into some kids. I don't even know who they are, but they know who I am. I can't remember their faces from being small and then growing up, but they remember who Miss Johnson is. And it also depends on the way you treat kids too. You can't mistreat kids. You got to treat them right. And I always would treat kids right. When they were wrong, I'd put them in their place, but I'd always treat them nice.
Did you enjoy being an administrator or a teacher more?
Well, when you're a teacher more, you're with the kids more. When you're a teacher, because you're with the kids from the time they come until the time they go home in the afternoon. With an administrator, oh sure, you're going to have kids in your office for misbehaving, but you're not with them 24. You're not 24/7 because they're not there 7 days a week. But you're not there with them the majority of the day, because either you send them back to their classroom when they come to your office, or you send them home. It depends on the infraction.
So coming to Milwaukee as like a young Black woman, did you ever face any issues like in terms of like gender equality or like racial equality?
I didn't know.
Was Milwaukee like a pretty segregated place when you came here? Like, did you live around people of your ethnicity?
I lived around people of my ethnicity. Yes, I did. When I first came to Milwaukee, they put all of the people from my school, we were at inner city schools. None of us was at outlining area schools. I didn't know what any of the outlining area schools looked like until I learned how to drive and learn the city. Because we were all put in the inner city schools. That's where the influx of Black students were. And they needed the people to handle the students. And we went in and handled the students.
Like on a day off for you, like on the weekend, what would you usually do around Milwaukee, or would you stay in?
Nothing. Go to church. There was nothing. There really wasn't anything here to do. If you go out, you go to a tavern or something like that, or you might go to a play downtown or something of that nature. But otherwise, there's nothing to do.
Did you ever go to any like public parks?
Not really. Not really. If there was barbecue to be done on a day, a holiday where people go to the park, we'd do it at our house and just sit out. Riley, you used to remember coming to our house for barbecue? We just sit on the patio or stay in the house and eat it. We never did go to the park.
I remember growing up, like I'd spend a lot of time at your house, and I would always go to that park by your house.
Oh yeah, you used to go down there and play on those swings and swing sets and things that they had in that little park. But as far as going to the park on a holiday like a 4th of July or Labor Day, something of that nature, we never did do that.
Well, when you were like a parent, like did my dad or Aunt Crystal ever like go to parks like to play by your house?
I used to take them down to the lakefront, and I used to take them to the zoo a lot in the summertime. We'd go out to the zoo. That would be our outings. And we did a lot of going to the drive-in theater. Mr. Johnson would take your dad and your auntie, and we'd put them in the back of the car, and we would go to the drive-in theater. That would be an outing for us. And then sometimes on Fridays, he would come home from work, and I'd be home. He'd pick up me and the kids up, and we'd go out and have a pizza or something like that. Go to a pizza place, have a pizza, something like that. That would be an outing. But it wasn't too much to do.
Did you have like a favorite restaurant around Milwaukee?
Not really. Not really.
Well, or Joe, go ahead.
I didn't have anything. Sorry.
Oh, I have a question. Like, I mean, what was your favorite memory like having a family in Milwaukee?
Having a family?
Yeah.
Well, my kids didn't grow up around my people. They grew up around your granddad's people because I didn't have any people here. The only time they would see us now, we would go to Michigan every year. During the summer, we would go uh, to Michigan so that they would get the chance to know my people. We take the train. I take them. Mr. Johnson would pick us up in Chicago instead of having us to transfer on the train to come to Milwaukee. He'd pick us up at the station in Chicago, where I wouldn't have to carry the kids, drag them through the station and all that.
So you were off during the summer as a teacher, right? So
Yep,
did you?
every summer, unless I taught summer school. Now, a lot of summers I was lucky enough to get a chance to teach summer school. So I'd work, doing those teaching summer school, and that would be it. And that was extra money, so I didn't mind it.
But other than that, you were just off during the summers.
And that I liked. I really liked that.
I mean, what would you do if you had all that off time during the summer? Like, just spend time with your kids?
Yeah, that's all. And go to Michigan. Or sometimes we would go down south to your great grandfather's.
Alabama or Tennessee?
No, Tennessee. They were from Tennessee.
I have a question. What do you prefer more, Michigan or Wisconsin?
No, I've gotten used to Wisconsin now. But
What do
if
you
I
like more
had
about
to, I could move back to Michigan. It wouldn't bother me. I could move back there.
What do you prefer about Wisconsin?
Really, I'd rather the summertime rather than the winter. But this winter has not been bad thus far because we've dodged the heavy snow, and that I like. But otherwise, my life has been good. I won't complain. Will not complain.
So you you said you were principal at one of your parish's school, your parish school. So
Yeah.
was that not MPS?
That was not MPS. That was I can't think of the name of it right now. Not charter school. It was a choice school. Community Vision Academy. That was the name of it.
Was there any could you see any differences in child behavior or even how the school?
Some of the behavior was the same that I had experienced in MPS. The kids are no different. They just, because they don't all come from your parish. When you have a school like that, they don't all come from your parish. Just a few of them come from your parish.
Were the teachers as good?
They were all retired teachers from MPS. My friends, I recruited them to teach because I knew they were good teachers.
So you would say that a child would have gotten a better education at the school you ran than most MPS
No,
schools?
I wouldn't say that because all of those teachers that were down there, they had taught at different schools in Milwaukee. So I wouldn't say that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did you have a best friend, like a best teacher friend, I guess, from teaching all those years?
Oh, I have several. I have one that has passed away, Iola McClendon. She was a classmate of mine in college, and she came to Milwaukee after she went to Detroit, started teaching first. Then she came to Milwaukee and started teaching, and she retired here in Milwaukee. And I have Irene Henry. She and I came here the same year, same time. We were roommates together until I got married. Uh, and then there are others that I know that I met since I've been in Milwaukee.
I have a
So,
question.
oh,
Actually,
no, Riley, you go first.
you should go ahead.
All right. So when did you get promoted to vice principal, and like how did the promotion come up? How were you? Did you have to
Well,
apply?
see, you put your name. You have, if you want to become an administrator, you have to put your name in the pool down at the school board. I put my name in the pool, and I always worked the cafeterias, lunch periods at school, because the teachers got paid extra money for doing that, and that extra money helped me. And so one day when I came off the playground, I always checked my mailbox. And I went in and checked my mailbox, and there was a note in it saying, call the principal at La Follette Elementary School. And I couldn't figure out what this principal want with me, because it never dawned on me that she calling you about that job. It never dawned on me, because I had forgot about it, that I put my name in the pool. So I went to my room, took off my coat and everything, because it was in the wintertime. And I called her, and she said, you've been highly recommended to be my vice principal. And she said, I would like to interview you. And I said, oh, yeah. And so she said, could you come this such and such a date? I said, okay, I'll talk to my principal and tell him you want me to come over for an interview. And she said, if you have any problems, tell him to give me a call. And I went in and told him, and he said, oh, that is beautiful, Barbara. Said, you probably get it. So I went over and she interviewed me. And the next day she called me and told me I had the job. And this was in March. And I left, went over there in March, and but right away I had to go to school, because my master's degree was not in administration. It was in reading with the curriculum instruction with the emphasis on reading. So I had to enroll in school, and I enrolled in school. Oh, what's the name of the school? Oh, slipping my mind. Anyway, and started the administration courses. I had almost another master's degree. If I had gone on and took the comps, I'd have had another master's degree. But I didn't need another master's degree. I just needed those administration courses. And I got those, and I got my first 5-year license after I got those courses.
Wait, what year did you get promoted to administrator?
92 or 93 it was.
Mhm. I have a question.
Yes.
What was your best memory being a grandparent?
Well, with my little grannies running around, and when I pick them up from nursery school, I tell them to buckle up unless the popo would get us. And you would tell me, Grandma, Annika and Ian didn't buckle up, and the popo gonna get us and take us to jail. That was memorable. I remember that. The popo gonna get us and take us to jail, Grandma. And I used to pick them up every day, because your mother and your father worked late, and I would go home and feed you, and then all they had to do was give you a bath and put you to bed when they brought you home.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You spent a lot of time at the Potawatomi down by the
What?
Menominee Valley.
What?
Do you have a favorite memory from the casino?
Yes, when I won $10,000 down there, and your granddad and I. No, that was when I won the 6,000. But your granddad and I, when I won big one time, took a train trip to Reno, Nevada, and that was very nice. I really liked that.
Mhm.
when did you start like the hobby? When did you always do it, or did it develop like later?
What's that? What hobby?
Going to casinos.
Oh, I just did that when they first put them down there. I used to take my husband's mother and her friend. They like to play bingo. We'd go down there and play midnight bingo, and they just had a few of the. But one time when we were playing bingo, I bought some pull tabs and won $500. But I used to go down there for bingo a lot. I never did until they put they started building it bigger, and when they put the machines in, then I started playing the machine. It's just a relaxing thing to me. That's all. It's nothing that I'm addicted to. No.
No, my grandparents used to go like play bingo and stuff too. So yeah,
Uh,
I think the casino is a very like good place for people in Milwaukee.
it is. It is. It is. Because my daughter is coming tomorrow, and she and I will go down there. Yeah, we'll go.
Oh, Grandma, I have a question.
Yes.
So, you never played any like sports growing up, but do you have a favorite Milwaukee sports team?
Not really. I like to watch the Brewers play. I didn't get a chance to do much of that this year, though. Your granddad and I used to sit down and watch the Brewers play all the time,
Mm.
watch their games on TV. And when I first came to Milwaukee and your grandfather and I got married, we used to go out there and see the Braves play out to County Stadium. We used to go out there all the time.
Mhm. Um, oh yeah, your kids were like pretty involved in sports. Like, did you ever go to their games, or was that more of like a dad thing for them?
Your granddad went to all of Chris's games. I I didn't go to too many of them because I'm the type of person I have to have my rest when I was going in their classroom the next day. And Marquette played a lot of their games on Tuesday nights. I'd be at home in the bed, and your granddad would go to those games. Plus, well, Chris only played basketball, and sometimes I would go to Crystal's games when she would have volleyball and stuff like that.
Did you go to any of my dad's state championship games at the Mecca?
No, no, mm-mm. Too far to walk. I couldn't do all that walking.
When did you like stop going to Braves games?
When they stopped playing out to County Stadium, we used to go all the time because it didn't cost that much to go to those games back then, and that was something that we enjoyed doing. Now, when the Bucks first came here, we bought season tickets, and Chris's father was a young boy, and we used to take him with us all the time because we had seats. Our season seats were right where the Bucks would come in and go out of the arena. And one day, he hollered out at Alcindor. He was still called Alcindor then, and he held his hand up and slapped him on the hand, and that was interesting.
Um, I mean, it sounds like Milwaukee was like a pretty nice place for you to have like a family.
It
And
was. It was a good place to raise. You didn't have to worry about your children. I would say that you didn't have to worry about them a lot.
yeah, it sounds like because I remember like my dad and Aunt Crystal talking about that restaurant that like gave them jobs and stuff when they were
Oh
teenagers, and they
yeah,
like
the Friendly Inn, and all they had to do was walk out the door and go because we were living right there by them, and they Chris had to just walk out the door. Well, see, Chris was their paper boy, and Chris came home one day and said, "I'm tired of fooling with these papers." I said, "Well, you don't quit a job until you have another one." I said, go over there and ask Frank for a job. And Frank knew who he was, and he went over there and asked Frank for a job. Frank gave him a job. Then he quit being the paper boy. And then when Crystal turned 16, she went over there as a bus girl and worked over there. So both of them worked over there. See, Frank and his wife lived, there was one unit between our units. They lived right there in the townhouses too.
What street was the friendly inn on?
Good Hope. Good Hope, 40th and Good Hope. And we lived on 40th and Good Hope in those townhouses. That was before we moved over on Melvina. 62nd in Melvina.
You come from a smaller town in Michigan, but do you think like, even though Milwaukee's like still like more of a big city, at least compared to Ypsilanti, like would you
It's
say?
a much big city compared to Ypsilanti. Ypsilanti is just a little small town. This is a much bigger city.
But do you think Milwaukee had that like kind of feel of like a big city, but also it kind of had like a small town, or at least like a smaller city, like area, at least to raise your kids like away from downtown?
Oh yeah. It was a very good place to raise kids. Very good. But any place is a good place to raise kids as long as you have control of your children. You have to have control of your children. If you don't have control of them, I don't care where you are, it's going to be bad raising them.
Joe, do you have any more questions?
I don't think so.
Oh, I've already mentioned this to you, Grandma, but Joe's grandfather was also a reading like specialist in MPS while you were there. But I don't think you ever crossed paths.
What school?
My mom sent me some of the lists. I can pull it up. Yeah, he was a reading specialist. And Clement Avenue.
Clement Avenue.
Yeah.
He was on the south side.
Mm-hmm.
What other school?
Lafayette. Yeah.
LaFollette?
Yeah.
What was his name?
Bert Schultz.
Huh?
Bert Schultz.
I don't know if I know him. Is he retired now?
Yeah, he retired. I don't know when. I think maybe like the 80s or 90s.
Oh, okay.
And he also said Tippecanoe.
Tippecanoe. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Alcott.
Yeah, Alcott School. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those South Side schools.
Mm.
Did they live on the South Side?
They live where I live, so in the Heights. They lived in the Washington Heights.
Oh, okay.
Like pretty close to where you guys are right now.
Oh, okay. Is he still living?
He actually died this summer.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Joe.
Thanks.
Sorry to hear that.
Grandma, do you have any other like stories that you would like to tell before we?
No, I've done enough talking, Riley.
Okay. Well, thank you for doing this for us.
Yeah,
That's quite all right. I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it. Now you know a little more, something more about your grandmother. Right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. Have a nice day.